Hello, Culture Matters podcast. I'm so excited to introduce you to our guest. But before I do that, here's a quote I picked just for this episode. There are many people who arrive at conclusions in life much the way schoolboys do. They cheat their teachers by copying the answer book without having worked the problem themselves. Soren Kierkegaard. My dear friend, Eddy Perez is back. The one and only student, leader, mentor, originator of originators when it comes to the American gift, founder of EPM, friend of the Culture Matters podcast. Thanks for coming back.
My
I picked that
pleasure.
quote because, right, there are many people who arrive at conclusions in life much the way schoolboys do. They cheat their teachers by copying the answer book without having worked the problem themselves. I want to unpack the idea of the CEO peer group, the idea of the rival, the team of rivals, the way that you view 1% better and adding to your tool belt to not only work the problem, but you get where I'm going with this.
Sure. Absolutely.
Why work? Why go through all that pain and suffering as a person in leadership to continue to learn every day? What's the value? What's the motivation?
It's funny you bring it up because I saw a little bit of a podcast that Arnold had yesterday with Logan Paul, and why do you keep doing what you're doing? In his case, working out. He goes, well, I ate breakfast 20 years ago. Should I stop eating breakfast? I slept 20 years ago. Should I not? But I think that's just part of the daily routine for myself, is learning. And I think a lot of that goes down to, I was just always a very curious person. It intrigues me to learn. I don't even know if intrigue is the right word. It's very fascinating to me. It's very interesting. It's just great to see how the parts can get put together and how they got put together. I think is just very fascinating.
How important has it been throughout time to put yourself in that room? So like in the case of, let's say, the peer group, being amongst other founders, other owner operators of organizations, the level of responsibility that comes with that and accountability. How important has it been to be in that room?
I mean, it's hard to put into words because of what they have done to level me up and teach me so many things. And the great thing is, because I think at times why I'm a big proponent of CEO peer groups is simple. Anytime you're stuck in a certain industry, all you really hear is about that industry. And to take it back to a story of 2017 and early 18 in our industry, everybody was talking about margin compression. It was the same record over and over, and people beating the dead horse on what needed to be done. And I started doing a search online, and I said, I need to find people who are leaders, who lead industries, who lead different businesses, but have no clue that there's a T in mortgage. Don't want them to know anything about mortgage. And that's what led me to the CEO peer group. And why that's been so monumental is they've all told me different things that they've done while leading people, while building their business, while building, even because you have to talk about your personal life there too. It is, what is your personal and professional? What's going on in both areas, which I thought was very powerful. Nowhere do you hear that in any particular industry, because people will view themselves, not everybody, but a lot of people will be like, that's my competitor. My job's to try to put them out of business. When it shouldn't be that way. There's plenty to go around and plenty of people to win. I'm just not of that scarcity mindset. And the good thing is, when I would come to these group of people with challenges, they would present me with questions and solutions that not only taught me how to ask these questions and solutions, but kind of gave me some data. And now that data could have been subjective data. However, it was very powerful, different ways they handled situations and how you could inject it for yourself to improve yourself.
Let's say someone is maybe they feel like they lack the resources or the resourcefulness to put themselves in a room like that. What's your counsel to them?
If they're running a business, they have the resources. So I would tell you to find it. If they're not running a business, I would tell you you need to build your group of advisors first. And it could be family, friends, mentors, people that you know, but you need to build your own group of advisors first if you can't afford. And then third, the reason I say they have the resources is it's I don't want to tell you what the dues are, but it's nothing crazy, like not even close to crazy. Like I think most people would be shocked if they found out what it was.
Why? The value to cost?
Yeah. I mean, the value to cost is astronomical. I mean, cost is so low, like put it below the screen and the benefit is above the screen. I
What do
mean,
you
it
think the
is.
reasons are people don't seek mentors, help? Like at one time you did it.
Well,
You someone.
You talked about it a little bit, what we're trained in school. Think about that. If you go take a test and it's a
Mhm.
closed book test, and then you decide to open the book or cheat, you can get kicked out of school and you're plagiarism. But in the business world, if you go do that, even any world, in sports, in politics, in any medium of life that you work in, arts, if you do that, you're a genius. So it's backwards. Like test should be open book. That's more of life. And that's probably why Kierkegaard meant by that is because you're trained not to go look for the answer. You're trained to memorize it. And if you don't do it, then you don't know what you're talking about. But when you look at how most people learn, a lot of people learn by listening, by doing, by interacting with others. Well, if you do that, that's called cheating. However, if you do that in the real world, that's called you're a phenomenal leader. That's why I don't think a lot of people do it. I think they have been indoctrinated, as I said before, in this Prussian education style of system, that if some tweaks were made to it, would be a lot better. I mean, my son Trip is starting a school that is similar to that,
Oh yeah.
and I think that's going to be more beneficial to him because you can take tests of different forms if you want to do them orally, write them out or interaction with the teacher. It's you know you don't take homework home with you. It's done in what they call a homework cafe, which is basically you take a class, you get a study hall, you take a class, you do a study hall, you take a class, you do a study hall. I think that's better setup for an individual, especially for somebody in his age turning, from that child to that he's now in the adolescence going into adulthood. I think it's a better preparation for college. And why college is powerful, it's not really the education you learn there that is so powerful. It is the structure in how you learn that education. You attend a class, and if you listen, you see somebody who truly lectures and teaches you the details instead of I got to pass a state level for you. And then what you do offsite on your own and what you take into it, very similar to regardless of what medium of your career you're going to divulge into. Even if you're going to be, a homemaker, take care of children, it's all very valuable, very
Hmm.
valuable.
In your experience, learning alongside CEOs, what are some of the drivers of why others are in the room?
A lot of it, there is camaraderie. Pretty much, I think the best way I heard it described is everybody needs high functioning brain trust of individuals advisory board that only has a vested interest in their well-being, you know, and I think it helps that, they may know enough about your industry, but it's really about structure, culture, vision. They really focus on, they may talk about some issues that are macro, but it still goes back to what is going on within your four walls in the micro. Um, it's just a very, I don't know how to really describe it because how impactful it's been. It's tough to describe into words unless you've lived it. It's just, they really are like your advisory board because, when you're leading a group of executives, not saying that they can't give good advice, but they have their own, I don't want to use the word agendas as a bad word, but they have their own agendas, their own thoughts, and it's just in your industry. So they have their own, I did it this way before, or I learned this way before, or I want to do it this way. Here, you'll get so many challenging questions, off the wall. And then they'll say, okay, it sounds like you're really on the right pace. What are some possible drawbacks if XYZ happens? I mean, they'll just challenge you in a very fascinating way that nobody in your executive team has that. I mean, you just don't have that level. I mean, you got to think about it, they're all either CEO presidents. I mean, they can be from running, a global law firm, regional accounting, investment advisor, PE, toy manufacturers in my group, that zipper company YKK, the president of North America. You have Michael Russell, whose father is one of the biggest pioneers in business and helped build Atlanta. You have so much different dynamics. It's really those dynamics. It's almost like, and you don't remember this, so you're too young for this, but it's almost like the cheat code of Contra when I was a kid, um, that a lot of people my age remember. The up, up, down, down. That's kind of what that is. It's a cheat code because it's kind of good that they have no idea what your industry is because you're going to fall on the bad habits or the things that you've heard.
Mm, mm. Where do you think you'd be in your career had you not put time into it?
A great question because that was a huge turning point. Like I said in my life, I'd heard the buzzword culture and I knew that team chemistry and dynamics, because that's what culture really is chemistry, dynamics, a vision that's demonstrated, how it brings people together. I knew it was important. And I'd played sports and I understood it. I just didn't know how to build it in the business world. And I got to see live how so many of them do it, from how colorful their offices are to how they interact to how a lot of them built behaviors and teach the behaviors that drive it and then formulate that into actions. I don't know where I'd be. I can tell you I wouldn't be sitting in the position I sit today. I wouldn't be sitting in, when our industry was already having challenges and the writings was on the wall when I presented my case to them in last June, and a lot of the advice they gave me, and some of it was the advice that they already knew. They said, "Hey, Eddie, you know this area well, and I know that you come to us. What do you think you should do?" I explained it, then they said, "Then that's what you should do. You knew it. I'm glad we got it out of you, but it was through different questioning that what I knew was in our best interest. They asked in so many different ways that it lets you pierce through and get to a cleaner. So I don't know. I don't think I'd be as ahead as I am, only because, ironically, I thought I did a lot of the moves later than everybody else, but I came to learn this past May that I may have been 9 to 12 months ahead of a lot of people. And what's interesting though, I went to them with one of my issues and said, "Okay, guys, I I feel like I was late to the party. So they even came up with so many good ideas on how to do a post-mortem and have all those notes so that you don't lose that focus in the future. So even though I was ahead, maybe next time I'm a couple more months ahead, which just always propels and lift up some more people within your organization.
What was the biggest learning lesson in that time?
In which time?
In the preparation.
Which
Sounds like
preparation are you talking?
it's a time of uncertainty.
Oh man, what? I mean, I have a great grasp for the future. You know, a lot of it, like they said, is, postmortem, when you can go back and reverse engineer what led to that road. A lot of it was what plagues so many leaders is the data was showing where the industry was going. It was showing that things were slowing down, and it's a tough balance, because if you're the first one out of the gate, it's like anything. If you're the first one, nobody wants to be the first one out of the gate, because that's where the more ridicule goes. And then people say you're wrong, and it can cause a lot of tension inside your organization. So people say, hey, let me just see how it goes. It's a very dangerous phrase. And maybe this isn't going to be what the experts are predicting or what this is predicting. Um, I can understand a play it by ear philosophy. However, it was very obvious um, that certain the fundamental data was changing, not just overall. So extremely important, extremely important. Because they also said, from a cultural standpoint, even if you've got to make tough decisions, it's better if you do it earlier, because the organizations that have to, that slowly stretch out from changing your business model, or if you've got to strategically realign, different things like that, anytime you put it off, you actually lose trust of the individuals, even if they don't like it. If you're moving in a different direction, if you possibly are morphing your business model, as much as they don't like it, if you speak to them and are very open about it, very upfront about it, you have a lot of candor and transparency about it. Even if they don't like it, they'll respect it. And that's all you could really ask for, is for people to respect it.
How important is inquiry questions in this medium of peers? It sounds like you're getting asked a lot of thoughtful questions.
Well, you got to put yourself out there. That's what makes it powerful. If you don't raise an issue, because part of the structure, you go through, every meeting is set up in a certain way. You go through your significant events that are personal and business. You have a speaker, you go through dialogue. But if you don't have what got issues to discuss, yeah, I mean, essentially IDSs. If you don't bring up a subject matter, and the great thing is with my boy Bud that leads at Old Man River, as we call him, because he does one-on-ones with you, sometimes he challenges you and says, no, you need to bring this to the group. So there is a good checks and balance there. So you've got to be vulnerable and bring those questions, because some people don't want to get up there, but you also have to present once. There's 15 people in our group, so once every 15 months you have to present the company. And there is, I don't want to call it harsh criticism, because they're giving you their time, the only gift that exists in this world, a true, not the only gift, what I meant to say, the only true commodity, because it runs out for all of us. They don't have to be there. They choose to be there. They choose to speak up. You can view it as a negative, or you can view it as, what are they trying to tell me? What do I have to learn here? Where can I really dive in deeper? Everything like that.
What have you? How has it impacted your leadership with your people?
I mean, as I said earlier, it's in so many ways. Like I said, they're the ones that, put me in touch with with Friedman that helped us create the behaviors that drive certain things. Because a lot of people talk about, what are your core beliefs that are extremely important, but they have, then you have to, how do you live them? So it's one of those how we have our, show the way, which is based off honor, but then we have the behaviors that you can do it because you need behaviors to build the habits to live something. It's backwards. You have to, and that's why reverse engineering is so powerful because that's backwards as well. You start at the end and you go backwards. You go to the beginning in the reverse.
Yeah, how's that helped?
I mean, it's been very impactful. And, it's tough to say, it's tough to describe exactly outside of, they've encouraged me to read more. They've encouraged me to dive in more. They've also encouraged and taught ways that in tough, because, you hear tough situations like during COVID, I learned all about the logistic challenges and you would hear people out there being very negative about that and making up stories that didn't exist. Well, I had people here that were giving me like live information of what was going on, how much freighter costs were going off, how much they were able to adapt that to the price and what they were doing there. Well, how has that impacted? That's conversations when we have our monthly quarter exec, I mean, our monthly Q execs, that's data, that's information that I can share with first with my executive team is who I share it with. And then they share it with their individuals that they lead. And then I could share it to the great masses. So like anything, you are harnessing a lot of knowledge and putting it forward, kind of like how water and you can turn it into hydroelectric power is how you're generating power, how you're generating growth for your organization. Because these details do matter and they are very vital. And you never know who's going to present to you with a good case. You can have a situation where something gets a little hairy and legal. Well, somebody in the group is an attorney. Two of them are. Just one doesn't practice it day to day. Very powerful tools. People could have been in sticky situations, and they explained their stances and how they did with that. And you learn just interesting things. Like one guy in my group, he owns I don't want to say, I mean, they do sleep studies, but it's like a sleep company and how important sleep is. And he's the one that opened up my eyes. I always knew sleep was important, but then the quality of sleep. And even before my doctor, he was the one that talked about melatonin and how valuable that is for sleep. These are all things that just allow you to show up better, more present, and more engaged every day in all facets of your life, personal, business, relationships, friends, anything of that nature. Very impactful.
You mentioned that there's speakers. So how's that unravel?
Like who unravels it, or how's that?
Like what is that? How is that implemented? What's that part of it?
That's part of the speakers come, and it's not every one of them. I think it's 10 out of 12. 10 out of 12 we have speakers. They bring just subject matters that may impact us. Like one of the last guys that's coming again is how to use ChatGPT for sales and how to build your social profiles. Those are extremely important features. So it's more knowledge. One time there was, I remember early on in the group, they had somebody who showed up that teaches organizations how to have asset protection, because that's very important when you're running an organization. Asset protection. There's been one guy who was a very dynamic, Dean Menudo, who was a phenomenal sales coach and sales structure builder, who coincidentally built his career off a company that I even knew many, many moons ago that was very powerful on the mortgage side. So he had a little bit of an affinity for it. And I was wondering in the group why he was asking me so many questions. I didn't find that out till later. So you just have different speakers that bring just different values, some of the current events, some of the things that are going on. Perfect example, my family and I are taking a road trip to Buc-ee's today. If you haven't heard about it, it's like this big thing to do. It's like this gas station, shopping mall, almost all in one. It's like a unicorn type environment. Well, one of the guys that he brought did the branding for Buc-ee's, and he said he knew he had hit eureka when in some group he was in, he heard somebody say, "Well, what makes you feel better?" Because that's what brands do. Brands that you attach yourself to make you feel better. And the guy says, "I feel better in my life when I use the bathroom at Buc-ee's," which I don't know how a bathroom can be so revolutionary. Maybe it's because we've all been to those, what is viewed as a gas station bathroom, even though this place has like 100 pumps and has like all sorts of foods, crazy stuff. Um, but that's when you hit branding at high levels, is when people are willing to sacrifice and believe in something for some sort of particular value. These are all things that I picked up in the group. I've hired some of them as speakers that have come to the organization. So that's opened up eyes. That's where I met Michael Alasso. He's a big speaker on that one. That's not where I met Janine Driver, the body language expert, but she is a speaker in that forum. You get some very fascinating speakers that really teach you so many different subjects.
In closing, it gets to the apprehensive, uncertain business operator of whether they're ready to put themselves in that position of judgment by peers. What do you say to them?
I would say you have nothing to lose, but you have a lot to lose if you don't take the action and do it. Just that simple. I just think you have to do it. I think it's very good. I think it's healthy. It's kind of like, you can work out on your own, but then everybody goes to the next level has a trainer. And this is essentially, you have a group of trainers. And look, and that may not be comfortable. I'm not going to sit here and say it's sunshine and rainbows, but nobody's critical and mean. I can tell you that too. So if that's something that you're sensitive to, ridicule, it's not like that. You may get challenged, but you get challenged in your workplace, like it or not, every day. So I think it's a very healthy, exercise of the mind and the spirit and the body, the mind, body, and spirit, on how to become a more effective and engaged and empowered leader, and learn from so many different sectors to then realize they're all different, but they all convey back one way or another, what goes on even in your own. So I'd say that if they're apprehensive, it could be that they haven't found the right one. And I'd say to start searching out there. Ask around people that are in, there's quite a few of them. I'm in Vistage, there's, YPO, that's a big one. There's quite a few different, organizations of it.